Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark Roden, and today we are going to be doing, I did a little poll on my channel the other day, and I was like, what is the most surprising, like, car shared engines, if that makes any sense? And people were like, you know, talking about how I should make it into a video, and I was like, that is a fantastic idea. Let's make this into a video. So I'm not gonna lie, I obviously had to do a lot of looking up and being like looking at other people's lists, if I'm being honest, and being like, what are some cars that people are, but I got my favorites, the ones that surprised me the most, the 12 cars that share the same engine with each other that surprised me the most. I wanted to do 10, but then I saw two more that I was just like, I have to include, and so I couldn't. There's 12. I'm sorry, but without further ado, let's get right into the list with number 12. So the way I'm going to do these lists is first I'm going to build up some tension with each one, my friend. So we're going to talk about right now the BMW M5 E60. That's a great car. It's a wonderful car. It has its, you know, serious reliability issues that everybody knows and loves about it, but hey, it's a 5-liter V10 that they slapped into a freaking BMW sedan, making 500 horsepower back in the early 2000s. And you want to know what company was like, that's such a good motor, we're going to put it in our car? A small company by the name of Wiesmann. And Wiesmann made a supercar called the Wiesmann MF5 that also shared the M5's motor, which if you really think about it, it makes 555 horsepower, by the way, in the Wiesmann. But if you really think about it, it does make sense why they would use this motor. You know, it's a 5-liter V10, already makes 500 horsepower, and M5 is definitely not a slouchy car. That's the reason why I kind of put it at number 12, because both these cars are very fast, and so it does make sense. But at the same time, it's just weird to know that there's a sedan out there that shares a motor with a supercar. Coming in at number 11, and this one is surprising for a completely different reason as to why any of the other cars on this list are surprising, and it's because it's the Ferrari Enzo, which is one of my favorite supercars of all time, and it is my favorite Ferrari of all time. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. A lot of people say they don't like the looks of the Enzo. If you think that, I want to slap you. But like, the Enzo is an amazing car. It came with a 6.5-liter V12, making 660 horsepower, which is crazy, especially for its time that it was built. And you know, Ferrari was like, that is such a good motor, but for some reason the people didn't like the looks of the Enzo, so it kind of got underrated. So let's put that motor back, and they put it in the 812 Superfast, which just goes to show how ahead of its time that motor was when it actually came out. The 812 Superfast, however, makes 789 horsepower, which is significantly more, but either way, the fact that a motor from the very early 2000s was put into a supercar of very modern, I'm pretty sure they're still making the 812 Superfast actually, so a 2023 supercar, 20 years later, they put it back in the car. That's pretty surprising to me. Not obviously, but they're both Ferraris, so it does make sense why they would share the same motor, but a 20-year difference is impressive. Coming in at the number 10 spot, you know what car I actually don't like? A little bit of a hot take here. The Mercedes G Wagon. I think it's not my style. I've never been an SUV guy. And on top of that, this is not a good looking SUV in my opinion. It's just a big block on wheels. Obviously the luxury is pretty good, and the motor is also very good. It's a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8, and in the wonderful G Wagon, it makes 577 horsepower, which sounds like a lot, but again, it's a G Wagon, so it's heavy. But it makes 577 horsepower. That's a lot of horsepower. We can't let that motor go to waste. We can't just put it in an SUV and waste our time with it. So you know what they did? They put it in the Aston Martin Vantage. The new Aston Martin Vantage supercars, they make 528 horsepower, which is actually slightly less than the G Wagon, which is kind of surprising, but it makes sense. It's an Aston Martin. It's significantly lighter than a G Wagon. It's very much better at handling and stuff like that than a G Wagon is, so it doesn't need as much horsepower. And it's just incredible that they decided, you know, we shouldn't let this motor go to waste. And like I said, I'm not a biggest Mercedes fan. I never really have been, but that earns my respect. You know, they didn't just throw the motor away. Coming in at the number 9 is another one where it's kind of like the Ferrari Enzo and the 812 Superfast, because the Nissan R390 was a supercar, a race car, honestly. Almost even, I would even classify it as a hypercar, to be honest. Back in the day, that raced in all these Grid 1 races and did really, really well. One of Nissan's best cars they ever made. It came with a 3.5-liter twin turbocharged V8, and it made 550 horsepower, which was incredible. The car was really good. And if that motor sounds familiar, that's because it is. They put that motor in the Mclaren MP4-12C. Now, McLaren obviously beefed it up a little bit. That's a significantly newer car, and so it made 616 horsepower, which is definitely better than the R390. And McLaren has always kind of had this little like history of not using their own motors. They always use like duplicate motors from other cars. The F1, the famous F1, is a BMW motor, so it's they definitely do that quite frequently, which is why it is here at the number 9 spot. It does kind of make sense, but a Nissan supercar that most people don't even know exists in the first place, being the birth of the motor to the MP4-12C, was very surprising to me. Next up at number 8, let's talk about a car that we all can afford one day, a car that's very, very bottom tier, I guess you could call it, in the terms of performance compared to like other cars on this list. The Honda Civic Type R. The Honda Civic Type R, this is specifically the FK8 model, came with a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4, making 306 horsepower. That is the first time a turbo has ever been put in a Civic, and people went crazy. It's also the first time America got the Civic. This car was very successful, as it should be. It was a great car. It's incredible. It's faster than a Bugatti around the Nürburgring. Fun fact for you. But you know what car's even quicker than that and shares the Civic motor? A skeleton of a vehicle, the Ariel Atom. The Ariel Atom obviously again beefed up the horsepower a little bit in the Civic, so it made 365 horsepower. But either way, this car is literally like a track monster, like a track weapon. And yeah, I know the Civic Type R kind of is as well, but this is on a whole different level, and it has a Civic motor in it. A Civic motor. The next time people call you crazy for liking Honda Civics, tell them that. Let's talk about one of the most underrated cars here, though, at number 7, the Toyota Celica. This car, you know, it sucks what happened to it, because they did great with the GT4. Then the 7th gen rolled around, and they decided, you know what, we're not going to do this GT4 anymore. And so everybody kind of like hated it because of that, but they didn't look at the normal GT. And if they did, they would realize that's a pretty decent car. Now, it's not great. It only came with a 1.8 liter inline-4 and only made 170 horsepower, but the car was light. It had a manual transmission. It looked pretty cool, and it was fun to drive. And a small company by the name of Lotus realized that, and so they put that motor in their Lotus Elise. Lotus, again, just like Toyota, realized their car is going to be light. They don't care if it's super fast in a straight line. They want it to handle around a track very, very well. And the Toyota Celica had a perfect motor for that. Toyota's always been incredibly reliable, and so they always decided, you know, let's make a reliable, fun track car. And that's exactly what they did with the Elise. They didn't even change a thing about the motor. It makes the same horsepower, 170 horsepower. It's literally the exact same motor as a Celica, but put into a Lotus Elise. Coming into the number 6 spot, let's talk about a small car called the Toyota Aristo. A lot of us in America know this car as the Lexus GS300. However, there's a lot of different generations of the Aristo over in Japan. And back in the day, when Japan was making some beefy boys, they were throwing their beefy boy motors into normal sedans because they could. And so this car came with a 3-liter twin turbocharged inline-6 that made 280 horsepower due to the gentleman's agreement. If that motor sounds really oddly familiar, that's because it's the same motor, buddy. The legend, the Toyota Supra Mark IV. Yes, that's right. This is the only other car that I know of. I mean, there could be another one, but this is the only other car that I know of that actually had the 2JZ GTE in it. Now, we have had a lot of cars, the SC300, IS300, GS300, that have had the 2JZ GE in it, but that's a significantly different motor. The GTE was put into the Aristo and the Supra. So if you're in Japan and you want a budget Supra, buy yourself an Aristo. Coming in at the number 5 spot is going to one that I actually did know before making this list due to Top Gear, actually, but it's the Mercedes S-Class. Now, I honestly, I was trying to do research. I could not figure out exactly which generation this is, but I can tell you it's some point in the 90s. It's one of the S-Class 90s, and it's the S600 is the name of it. So it's the Mercedes S600 in the 90s. I don't know exactly the chassis code, but it came with a 6-liter V12. Which was obviously incredible, but the car was also massive, and it was a luxury car. It wasn't meant to go fast. So it only made 406 horsepower, which, yes, 406 horsepower is still incredible, don't get me wrong, but in a V12, in a huge, heavy sedan, that's not that great. But then, a small company, and I mean small company because they're actually bankrupt now, Pagani put that motor in the Pagani Zonda. The Pagani Zonda is incredible. I mean, honestly, it's one of it should be praised much more than it is. And it made 444 horsepower, obviously after beefing it up a little bit, and it made this car faster than the Lamborghini Murcielago of the time. That's incredible, dude. Now at number 4, we're talking about my car, actually, my Nissan 350Z. This little sports car that all 16-year-olds out there want to buy, and then they buy them, and then they crash them into a tree because they don't know how to handle 300 horsepower in a rear-wheel drive car. That's exactly what the car we're talking about is. It comes with a 3.5-liter V6, a very famous one because people don't like the noise of it, making 306 horsepower, which is very good. Again, like I said, I know I own a 350Z, so I'm obviously a little bit biased here, but the 350Z is a great sports car. But you know what's not that great of a car? The Renault Espace. The Renault Espace decided, you know what we want to do? Put a sports car motor in our minivan. And so they did, and it has 241 horsepower, which is obviously a lot less than the 350Z, but it didn't need as much, so it does make sense. But the reason why they actually did that is because even though the 350Z, a lot of people like to make fun of it or whatever, the car is very reliable. The motor is a very reliable motor, and they just wanted a reliable motor that's good on gas, that has a decent amount of horsepower to pull this giant minivan around, and so they just threw it into a Renault, which is very weird. Coming in at the third place, bronze medal, is another one that I actually knew because of Top Gear. It's, oh my god, my dogs are sprinting around upstairs. It's an SUV that goes by the name Volvo XC90, my bad. An SUV that actually I genuinely like. I don't really like SUVs. I like this one for some reason. I don't know what it is about it. I just like Volvos in general. They do something right. It came with a 4.4 liter V8, by the way, which is really cool, especially back in the early 2000s. And it made 315 horsepower as well, which is pretty cool back in the early 2000s for a average family sedan. Like, these cars are not expensive, dude. Like, these are not like baller G Wagons. And then Noble decided to put that same motor in their M600. Obviously, they added a lot of stuff to this motor because it ended up making 650 horsepower, which is a whole lot more than 315. But either way, it has the same platform. It's an SUV and a supercar that shares, and not just a supercar, the Noble M600. Second place, though, if you weren't already sick of these supercars being paired with SUV motors, the Chevy Tahoe. My mom has owned a couple of those, and they're very slow. I will be the first to tell you, they're not that fast cars. But they did decide, Chevy, back in the early 2000s. Actually, this is a 90s car, but back in that era when they were making cars, they decided, you know what? Every single one of our cars deserves an LS, and so they put an LS in the Chevy Tahoe, a 5.7 liter V8, and in the Tahoe, it only made 255 horsepower. But a lot of cars in history have decided to put that LS motor in them from factory. But the one that I was most surprised about was the Ultima GTR. The Ultima GTR is, again, a track weapon. I would even say it's more of a track weapon than a lot of the cars we've talked about so far today. It makes 556 horsepower, which you may be thinking, oh, well, yeah, they probably did a lot to that. And remember, guys, this is an LS. They probably, you know what they did? They probably like farted on it and accidentally made 556 horsepower because it's an LS motor. So it was probably very easy. The car is probably really reliable now too, since it's got an LS in it, and it handles like a monster. This thing is lightweight. It's literally just like, imagine if you wanted to buy a Le Mans LMP1 car, but didn't have the money for a Le Mans LMP1 car. This is what you bought. But first place, not only the one that surprised me the most, but also the one that surprised you guys the most, because it ranked number one in the poll that I did, the Ford Crown Victoria, the car that was used for police officers for years and years and years and years, was built for years and years and years, and now is even still being used by a lot of 16-year-olds out there when they're getting their first car, because they're dirt cheap and an amazing option. That car came with a 4.6 liter V8, and it made 235 horsepower in the Crown Vic at 1 year. I mean, the horsepower changed every single year, but you know what company decided they wanted to use that motor though? Koenigsegg. Koenigsegg, with their legendary debut car, the CC8S, was using the Ford Crown Vic's motor, making 655 horsepower in it. Obviously, did a lot to change the motor there, but either way, it used the Crown Vic motor. Think about that. Next time you see a Koenigsegg CC8S, which obviously doesn't happen that often, but the next time you think about it or whatever, think to yourself, that car shares the same motor that the 16-year-old down the street doing donuts in has. That is freaking mind-blowing. If that's not mind-blowing to you, I don't know what is. This is one of the world's first hypercars, and it shared the motor with a freaking police car at the time. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. This was actually a really fun video to make, so if you have any other ideas of videos kind of like this, where they're top 10s, but they aren't top 10 budget cars, let me know. I would love to do other videos like this. I didn't think it would be as fun as it actually was, so like I said, let me know. I mean, obviously you guys always are recommending stuff for me, and I really appreciate that, guys. Also, if you don't care about me and my life, click off the video now. It's the end of the video. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate that. You're awesome. If you do care about my life, I want to update you guys a little bit on something that I've been going through. My stomach issues. I've been telling you guys all about that recently, and I wanted to bring it up one more time because I actually think I've cracked the code. I had yogurt today, and I have been fine for like 5 days now. I haven't felt sick for like 5 days. I've ate some yogurt today, and I've been feeling sick again all day. So I honestly think I might be lactose intolerant, which freaking sucks because I love pizza, but if I am, so at least I know what it is, and I'm super happy. But let me know what you guys think, because I know that some of you guys are significantly smarter than I am out there. So let me know what you guys think the issue is. I just wanted to let you know about that. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. The Integra has been dropped off for wrap. It's getting wrapped as we speak. That video will obviously be out when it's done. I can't wait to show you. I mean, you guys already know the color if you watched the video. But either way, I can't wait to show you. It's going to be so much fun. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das vidanya. We're so close to 80,000 subscribers, by the way. Thank you. And have a nice night.